And hello, everyone. Welcome to Game Over here. Damian Smith joined alongside Kaja from Game Over Vancouver, and the Ottawa Senators dropped the game 4-3. Well, we have a nice little crossover edition here tonight between, in my opinion, my two favorite teams in Canada. Vancouver being my second. Kaja, welcome to the broadcast here. It's a pleasure to have you. What did you see out of that game between the Ottawa Senators and the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, I feel like the Canucks near the end there sort of tailed off. They didn't really have the same offensive push that they had throughout the rest of the game. I think they still played decently considering they were missing if they're missing a few key pieces right now regardless, but they ended up missing their captain for most of the game. So
Yeah, we could
there's
definitely
that.
let's get into that just to start off here. Because yes, it's a penalty, right? I think we can both agree on that, right? It's a cross check from the back, and Norris goes face first in the boards. Do I think that maybe he sold it a little bit? Yes, but a lot of players in the NHL do nowadays. That is a completely different conversation for another day, right?
I was about to say you have Tim Stutzla on your roster.
E-
Like, let's calm down a second.
exactly. So sure, give him a 2 minute boarding penalty. I don't know the rule book like some do, but I don't think that's a penalty, and it makes it even more bad and embarrassing for the Ottawa Senators. The fact that I think they got two shots off in that game, in that penalty sequence, and for the first couple of minutes, they were passing the puck around pretty much everywhere, but they weren't shooting the puck. And they weren't. I'll give some credit to the Vancouver Canucks on how they boxed them out a little bit, but the Ottawa Senators at the end of the day got barely any shots off in that sequence at all. And listen, I don't watch a lot of the Vancouver Canucks games, but I can imagine that if you have Quinn Hughes out of your lineup, you struggle in a lot of aspects, and that comes to offense. But the Ottawa Senators still allowed 4 goals tonight with Quinn Hughes out of the lineup. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. And yeah, it's tough. So you guys have now brought yourself back into a playoff position. So far in this season, what have you seen from the Canucks compared to last year? I know you had the same coach and everything like that. You've lost some players, but overall, what have you seen with the Vancouver Canucks so far this year?
I mean, I would just say I have no idea what's going on. We've had a few injuries. I It feels like sometimes their fight is out, that sometimes they're just chilling, laid back. I think they can coast to the playoffs, and that's not really reality right now. Um, and yeah, I I was about to say you said that the Sens only got two shots off on that ensuing power play after the Quinn Hughes whatever happened there. And I was just gonna say that's just the Travis Green formula. So you
Isn't it?
guys, it I when you said that, I immediately thought back to, oh yeah, Travis Green, Mike Yo, you guys are on the bench. Oh yeah,
Oh,
this is exactly
this is
how
not
it's gonna
good.
work.
This is not good. I'm not looking forward to this because it's going to be great to have some intel on a lot of the players that are on this team and the coaching staff as well, because obviously the Canucks lived through the Travis Green days. And we'll get into him a little bit later. But of course, the game starts off with the first goal coming from the Vancouver Canucks. Um, and of course, like the Sens so far this year, anytime they allow the first goal of the game, you can kind of just you can scrap it. Like you might as well just not watch because this team is not coming back. And I hope this is the first time that I've done this sort of crossover with anyone. Actually, I've done one with Andrew Berkshire. So I don't mean it like come across as extremely negative because I'm not usually this way. It's just it has been a really tough couple of weeks for Ottawa Senators fans. So Jake DeBrusk opens the scoring with like a minute and a half left. Artem Zub takes the penalty, And you just got to sit there and just feel embarrassed as an Ottawa Senators fan. Because that penalty shouldn't have happened. There was a minute and a half left in the game, or in the period, and he just took it. And of course, the Vancouver Canucks score with a minute and a half there, and kind of just take all the momentum heading into the second period. Then the Ottawa Senators come right back there. The Brady Tkachuk with a tap in on the power play. Both goals for the Sens tonight were on the man advantage. Ties the game up, and it was pretty early in the second period, so you're thinking, okay, like this is a good rebound. But then 6 minutes later, Teddy Bluger, who honestly might be one of my favorite role players in the entire NHL, makes it 2-1 there. What have you seen from Bluger, just as sort of an off-topic thing? Is he is he a third-line center? Is that sort of what he is? I know he doesn't put up a ton of offense.
He's been pretty much the third line center because the Canucks have had the third line is what it's been coined as. I mean, obviously because of the players that are out currently, like Miller, like Besser, they don't exactly have the same structure. But Bluger last season it was Bluger, Dakota Joshua, and Connor Garland were all on a line together, and they were given a lot of different names. The no name line, the third line, it was a lot. But Teddy Bluger overall, I think he is able to drive the play for the bottom six. I mean, Max Sasson gets his first NHL point off of Teddy's goal, so good job for him. This is his first NHL game tonight, so that was really good to hear about him getting that point. And I also wanted to note about Jake DeBrusk because he scores on the power play in the first period. And then he also scores later on in the second. And as well, he also gets an assist on the Kiefer Sherwood 4-1 goal. And I just want to highlight Jake DeBrusk because people have been saying, oh, he needs to step up. He needs to step up for when, the situation that has happened. I mean, Miller's out. Besser's out. You need the guy who you gave a very long contract with, admittedly, not as much money as you're giving to other players that have gotten their fair share of criticism. But Jake DeBrusk, he because Pettersson wasn't doing so well, he didn't get that criticism. Now that Pettersson is catching up a bit, DeBrusk was on the hot seat a bit. He needed to step up. He needed to perform, as, two of the Canucks, arguably two of their biggest performers, were out, and Quinn Hughes also gets knocked out of the game too. So Jake DeBrusk, 2 goals, 1 assist, awesome game for him tonight. Elias Pettersson gets 2 assists on the night, and yeah, I think I believe it's DeBrusk, Sherwood, and Pettersson is that line right now. They're on fire. I have no idea what they're putting in their Gatorade, but kudos to them.
I mean, same thing with Kiefer Sherwood has been an excellent ad for you guys. Even just starting the season, the Canucks start off a little bit slow, but it seemed like a lot of the fan base really liked this player. I believe he signed a 1-year contract, and he was sort of an issue apparently in your playoff series against Nashville last year. And of course, he signs with you, I think 1 year, around $1.5 million. He has been an excellent ad. And I think one thing that Vancouver has done, especially well in the Rick Tocchet era, I could be wrong on this, but they have added some quality depth pieces. When you look at the Pius Suitors, the Teddy Blugers, and then now Kiefer Sherwood, is it Rick Tocchet that's vouching for these guys, or is it? I feel like overall, just Vancouver's in a better place now than they were. Kind of ironic, but under the Travis Green and Jim Benning era.
Well, I think any era other than the Jim Benning era is a good era to be in. I will say Rick Tocchet, he came in 2 seasons ago. I don't know if Tocchet is necessarily campaigning for these guys. I usually assume so if it's a former Pen, but there's also that whole mentality in the front office too, because we basically took whoever was with the Pittsburgh Penguins during their runs in the late 2010s, and it's just like, okay, you're a Canuck now. Yeah. Like Jim Rutherford, Patrick Calvin, that sort of thing. And Tocchet was brought in to be the Miller Whisperer. That worked pretty well. Miller hit over
Did.
100 points last year. But I'm not sure if it's generally just a talk it thing. I think he does have quite a bit of a say when it comes to player like personnel decisions. Obviously, Daniel Sprong was not fitting into the talk it system, so he got shipped back out to Seattle. He does have a say. I think it's like partially physicality, partially just. I'm not sure. I think it's more he drives a more physical play.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So he values those players.
For sure. And I mean, we'll talk about Travis Green's style a little bit later because, of course, being out here on the East Coast, we don't get a chance to catch a lot of Canucks games, right? So this is a very rare occasion. Fun fact, I am actually living in BC, so I know a little bit more about them now. But yes, I have enjoyed my time here, but I'm still a Sens fan at the end of the day. Overall, your final last thoughts on that game. The Canucks, I think they're starting a big road trip here. The Ottawa Senators, we dropped 4 in a row. Obviously, you can tell, like, I'm devastated at this point. We dropped to 8, 11, and 1. So we're now at the quarter mark of the season, and we're basically out of it once again. So like last time you made the playoffs was 2017. I'm sort of, on this broadcast here, I'm going to be asking you some questions because I feel like there's been some sort of parallels with the Ottawa Senators and the Vancouver Canucks sort of over the years. Two of the markets in Canada that have maybe struggled the most in the past decade when it comes to making the playoffs. You could sort of lump in Montreal there, but teams like...
they made a final.
Yeah, right? So, but they've lost in the past 3 or 4 seasons. And then even before that, right, they would have made it in 2020. But there's been a lot of pain on both sides, and it seems like, you guys are doing a good job at coming out of that now. I know it hasn't been a perfect start for your team, but like looking at the Sens tonight, we had a completely healthy roster other than Noah Gregor. You guys don't have Besser, Hughes, and Miller, right? Those are 3 huge parts of your team. And you don't have Demko.
And Demko.
Yeah, the Demko,
yeah.
Right? I guess you've sort of gotten used to that. One other thing before we head into the second part of Game Over here tonight. Kevin Lankinen, overall thoughts on him so far this year? I know we had in this game with I think a .905 save percentage. Is he holding down the fort for the Canucks before Demko comes back eventually? But we don't even know when that's going to be, it seems like.
I mean, Demko's just running on vibes, and honestly, I appreciate him so much for it. I think Lankinen's doing a good job of holding down the fort. I do think that they could give Schoblocher a couple more chances in net. That's just me, though. Personally, yeah, Schoblocher, he did perform well for us in the playoffs, and I think he just needed some more time to develop because, like, he's like 23. That's like 2 months old in goalie terms.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
He's very young. Lankinen, he has that NHL experience. He was back up to UC Soros last year, so I feel like he's doing his job fairly well. As he's not going to be a Vezina caliber goaltender, but 905 headed into this game. He stopped 26 of 29 tonight, so I think he's doing just fine. I know Demko, when he comes back, he'll be, running the net, and Lankinen will be back up most likely, or basically definitely at this point. Schoblocher will be back down in Abbotsford to continue his development, but yeah, I think Lankinen's done a pretty good job. I lived through the 22-23 year when Demko got injured, and we had Spencer Martin and Colin Delia, I think.
My goodness.
Yeah, that was a tandem.
That's a tandem. That's a tandem for sure.
At least Colin Delia can read.
Yeah. But yeah, at least you guys are in the mix, right? You'll take that. And I have, at least from an outsider perspective, I have much more trust in the Canucks. Like, before, I'd be really high on them because they always had the pieces, right? They had the first line center in Pettersson. They had the second line center. This was back in the day when they had Bo Horvat. You had the very good winger in Brock Besser. And then you had the number 1 D in Quinn Hughes and the starting goalie. And it took them a little while, or a couple of seasons in there, until they eventually got it rolling. I think the Sens are exactly in that position right now because we have the pieces on paper and we just can't seem to put it together. But that's all that I will say, at least for tonight, because honestly, for the most part, I don't really want to talk about the game itself, at least from an Ottawa perspective. I want to talk about how the fans want to feel without dominating the Ottawa storyline too much. But before we head into the second portion of this broadcast, where we talk about the Ottawa and Vancouver connections, I just want to talk about the flagship show of our network in Hyperdrive Hockey, where Kev, Max, and Daphne have you covered 2 times per week, and they talk all things hockey, whether it be here in North America, in Europe, or whatnot. They talk about prospects. They basically talk about everything. So you can head over to our Game Over channel, as well as you can check out our website for that as well if you want to dive into some more content there. Now let's head into period number 2 here. I want to talk about the Ottawa and Vancouver connections because we only play against each other twice a year, and it was chippy tonight, but there's not really a rivalry between Ottawa and Vancouver. There's not a ton of connections. We're both so far from each other. Unless we ended up in the Stanley Cup final, there's not really going to be a whole lot there. So on the Ottawa side, right, you have Zach McEwen, Adam Gaudette, and Travis Green. And you said that Vancouver also had Mike Yeo as well, right?
And Travis Hamonic.
Yes, that was the other one. And you have Eric Brandstrom right now. So we could talk about a little about him as well, even though he was pretty invisible tonight. But let's talk about Travis Green. I just have to. I have to at this rate. Because, you kind of give him a pass at the start of the season because every coach needs to, figure things out, right? It's a new team. And when we were 500, I was okay with his performance overall because he faces the media well. He doesn't give a whole lot up there. But when it comes to the play, Ottawa was doing so well for the first 15 games of the year. Funny enough, according to Natural Stat Trick, they were 6th in odds to win the Stanley Cup because of the way they were starting the season. Yes. Yeah. Seriously, literally a week ago before they went on this 5-game losing streak. Okay, so just give me the rundown of Travis Green here because we've had 20 games so far.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have an understanding of what style of play the Ottawa Senators play, but what did you see in his tenure there in Vancouver that maybe have continued into tonight?
Just out of playoffs. Yeah, I don't know. He was the head coach of Utica, our AHL team back in the day before we had the Abbotsford Canucks. So he was the head coach there, and then he was brought up, I believe, when we fired Willie Desjardins. Yeah, it was Tortorella, that didn't work out for a season, then Desjardins, then Green. So Green was head coach starting in 2017-18, and that was the final Sedin season as well. Missed the playoffs 31-40 and 11. Then head coach in 18-19, 35-36, and 11, so a little bit better, but still not really getting there. 19-20, that was the COVID-shortened season, so the team got into the playoffs through the play-in round in the bubble in Edmonton. And I feel like that's what continued Green's job as Canucks head coach, was getting into the playoffs. Is we beat Minnesota that first series, and then round 1, technically, we beat the reigning Stanley Cup champions in the St. Louis Blues. So I feel like that's how Green kept his job. If I'm being honest, if we didn't make it past Minnesota or St. Louis, maybe
he's gone,
or maybe he's gone, or maybe just Minnesota. I don't know. But we lost eventually against the Vegas Golden Knights in round 2. round two, the third round. It was weird.
But
And then the following year was the year we absolutely sucked. It was the Canadian division year when everything was awful. And one of the current Senators gave everybody COVID. Talk a little bit about Adam Gaudette and
that was
why
him. Okay, could have
It
been
was Adam
McEwen,
Gaudette.
but yeah,
Oh no, it was Adam Gaudette. He went to Whistler, and then he went to Whistler breaking protocol, allegedly.
right.
Um,
Okay,
During the season, came back to the team, had COVID. Everybody got COVID. The Canucks were shut down effectively for like 2 weeks, and then the NHL still rushed them back to play. Um, yeah, it was not a great situation. Like the players were trying to tell the league, like, "Hey, we can't play. We're
yeah,
not healthy," and then the league was still like, "No, you have to do this." So they were still playing. I think by the time the playoffs had started, they were so far out of the playoffs, and I think they were playing Calgary, who was also out of the playoffs at that point. I'm pretty sure. So there's that. Yeah. So that was the 2020-21 season. And people are kind of fed up. He has one season with the Canucks that is over 500, and that was the 1920 season. The Canucks' 50th season. And then 21-22 starts. He goes 8-5, 8-15-2 in the first 25 games and gets fired.
that's so close
the
to
day
our
after
record right
my-
now. Like we're 8-11-1, right? Like we're right
Yeah.
there.
This one was he got fired after the Canucks just could not pull anything together. It was a 4-1 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins at home. It was December 4th, 2021. A jersey got thrown on the ice. There's chance of firebending in the crowds. Next day, you wake up, Travis Green's fired. Jim Benning is fired. Dan Smeal's interim GM. And Bruce Boudreau is head coach. Like, also, the night of the jersey toss was also Hockey Night in Canada because it was a Saturday, and Thatcher Demko was on After Hours that night, and he's just staring, like, off into space, and I felt so bad for him because, like, it's not exactly his fault the Canucks could not play whatsoever. It's, yeah. And, also, fun fact, it was my birthday that night.
Oh, what a great
So
night! What a great night!
it was a great night because I'm like, I remember, oh yeah, I think the Penguins are winning. We turn off the game, we turn it back on. I'm like, why does Demko look like that? And I go on Twitter and I was like, oh wow.
You guys
Yeah.
turned it around though eventually. So that would have
Well,
been one playoff series in around like 10 years, pretty much, or one playoff appearance
well,
because 2012
yeah.
would have been the last one. 2013.
I think we made
Or
it 2015.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, forgot about that one.
Yeah, we made it in 2015. We didn't get far. But
Calgary.
yeah, we made it in 2015. Yeah. Made it in 2015, didn't make it again. We made it in the bubble, but that wasn't at home, so we didn't host a playoff series for almost a decade.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and that's when I started hopping on the Vancouver bandwagon again. But yeah, Travis Green, I'm not gonna be like, oh, fire him or whatever right now because I want to give the man a chance. This is the first time I've like openly criticized him as well. Steve Stais, you gave him a 4-year contract. You gave him a 4-year contract. 4 years. Yep. Yep. You gave him 4 years.
I mean, that's about when his tenure ran out for the
Hmm.
Canucks, so maybe that's I guess his shelf life.
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, I think he won a championship with the WHL Portland Winterhawks in 2012-2013 as head coach
Hmm.
with with an 809 win percentage. So I
It's
feel
pretty
like
good.
that kind of spurred it. Yeah, and Utica made it to the finals in 14-15.
Hmm.
So I feel like that kind of spurred it into his career with the Canucks. And then, I mean, he's not a terrible coach. There are some coaches in this league who I think should not be coaching in this league, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah, Mike Yeo also, I believe he was running the power play. Oh, did he leave after the first? Yeah, he left after, okay, I need to Now I need to look this up because
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Mike Yeo has ran the power play this year, I believe, and our power
Mhm.
play has been top 10 in the league overall, and has been quite solid. So I have no issue there with his performance so far. I know he was a head coach, and it's probably a good thing he's not one anymore because he can just kind of settle in and let Travis do the head coaching duties.
he, sorry, he was head coach the year he was the head coach that got fired for Craig Berube and for the Blues in
Right.
2019.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think, yeah, he was our assistant coach for the past 2 seasons, apparently. And I didn't know he was still with the Canucks last year. But he was, yeah, he was an assistant with us, and I just like when you were talking in 22-23, and we were talking when you were talking about how the power play they just kept passing the puck back and forth to each other. I was like, yeah, that's Mike Yo. That's either Mike Yo or
Interesting.
Travis Green. Both of them combined, it's just
Well, because
a
one
lot of
thing
passing.
that I was seeing a lot, and I've been seeing a lot with the Sens in this losing streak, is they just play on the perimeter, and teams have identified that okay, like Stutzla can Stutzla's been great this whole year, and he tries, and he's been the Sens' most consistent player. But when he's just like stick handling with the puck around on the outside of the zone, making fancy plays and stuff, it's not going to do a whole lot when five of the players the Vancouver Canucks are covering the slot, and they're doing a great job at it, right? But the Sens could not figure out a way how to get to the front of the net tonight whatsoever. I know Vancouver has like a bigger decor than most, so they should be good at that. Like you look, Carson Soucy's what 6'5". I know Darren wasn't in the lineup tonight, but he's 6'6".
Yeah, he's banged up, I think.
Yeah, but Myers 6'8". Like there's a lot of reach. Juleson I think is 6'2", 6'3". But the Sens like literally they could not get the puck in front of the net. And it's not because they have the inability to do it. It's just they didn't do it. Like they planned to keep passing the puck around the perimeter and hope that a seam would open up, and they just plain and simple they did not do that. And that's what they did on the power play as well. They just kept moving the puck around. Sanderson passed over to Batherson over to Stutzla, but then they keep moving it around and they keep waiting. And the one thing about power plays, right? Or if you're holding on possession in the offensive zone, if you actually like get the puck in front of the net, then the opposition is going to scramble and get thrown off because they're going to panic, right? But then you got to get the puck back, and the Sens just simply put didn't do that. Now I'll give credit to Vancouver here tonight because I actually think they did a fair job defensively overall, for most of the game up until maybe the last couple of minutes. But the Sens, they got to figure it out because they're 8-11-1 now. And I know there's a long way to go in the season, but I don't even want to check the standings. I don't want to check the standings because I'm just going to be sad. Yeah, like that's where I'm at right now.
That's fair. Yeah, I I feel bad for the Sens because it reminds me a lot of like the rebuilding Canucks, but it feels like we've kind of moved forward throughout that stage, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of the Canucks of a few years past. I the Sens are in a weird spot personally for me because I on paper, yeah, they should be really good, and they're going on how many seasons now without a playoff appearance? 7?
So this would be their eighth if they miss. Yeah.
Real? Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, if they miss the playoffs this year, it's 8th. I mean, they gotta put out an amazing performance on their next road trip as they're now 5 points out of the last wild card spot. Thank you, Ty. Um, they gotta put on an amazing performance because they're going on the road for like 14 games, was it?
I think it's
They're
it's
they
9. I think it's 9 games.
Okay. I just know they said it on the Canucks radio here, and it was like, oh yeah, they're going like their next 14 out of 19 games are on the road, and I was like, why is it that many? It's because of the World Juniors,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I feel like that's kind of weird to have it. during like in an NHL arena during an NHL season, but that's just me. I can understand, but if there's an NHL team, it's an established market,
Yeah.
brother. Um, yeah, it's a rough go of it. I just real put two and two together. Maybe the Canucks aren't here because Taylor Swift's coming here, so that's why they have a long road trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
December 6th, 7th, and 8th.
I kind of want to move on to Zach McEwen and Adam Gaudette. So we've had 20 games with them so far. Gaudette had, I think, 7. I think he has 8 goals now.
Yep.
He was always an intriguing prospect because the dude scored a lot. And I remember in 2020, in the year like heading into like the bubble year, not the bubble year, so the year before the bubble year, Adam Gaudette had around like 35 points in 60 games. And I think he was 23 at that point. So it's like, okay, like here we go. He's progressing well. Next year, hopefully he becomes just like a top 6 forward. And then he just kind of fizzled out a little bit. He goes on waivers. He actually, like, he got acquired by the Sens. He didn't do well there because DJ Smith didn't use him well enough. But also he's one of those weird players where he's not going to kill penalties. And he's always been a scorer his entire life. He's not a face-off guy. So where do you put him, right? But he goes to the AHL. He scores 44 goals for Springfield last year in like 60 games or something like that. And then he has a great camp in Ottawa. And Travis Green, I would say, like, I'll give Travis some props here. He has utilized them very well this year. Zach McEwen played with the Canucks for a couple of seasons. And that's probably where he's known the most in the NHL. He's flip-flopped teams, been on waivers, LA, Philly, signs a 3-year deal in Ottawa, funny enough, last summer, which is crazy to think about. It's like Zach McEwen, 3 years. However, it's only $775K. He has basically played every game this year. I know the fourth line for the Sens has not been the issue, but I would be okay with him sitting because people aren't complaining on McEwen because he's like the 12th forward, but he hasn't scored in like 15 games and he's not there to score. I get it. But in this day and age, you need a fourth line that's going to score goals. But what can we expect with Adam Gaudette and Zach McEwen on the Sens over a full season?
Over a full season, Adam Gaudette, I feel like it's gonna slow down eventually. Just looking at the numbers, like he has scored 44 goals. I mean, yeah, AHL, but whoa.
Yeah. Well, he's got a great shot, right? He's always had that.
Yeah. I mean, his goal knocked the Canucks effectively out of the playoffs in 2022. So it was a shootout, like the 5th round. Gaudette gets thrown out there. I was at that game, and Adam Gaudette comes on, and I'm like, oh, no way. No way. And then he scores, and then that was that. And then the Canucks went on a huge losing skid, and then they were eliminated by the time they played next at home, which was the week after against Seattle, because they got eliminated with, during the first intermission because LA had clinched or whatever. Anyway, yeah, I remember that. I still hold that against him, and also the fact he gave everyone COVID. Allegedly, I was not there. I know he's been scoring. I did not realize it was at this kind of pace.
He's been good.
He's been good. He's not exactly like, I don't know, a Brock Besser type winger, but like at the same time, that's pretty good. I think Zach McEwen, his job is mainly to beat people up. I think he is a very physical player. I'm not sure if you're going to get a lot of scoring out of him, but he is there to try and shut people down. Like, he had 110 penalty minutes for the Flyers in 21-22. That's impressive. Sometimes I think that when the Canucks need a bit more toughness, I feel like, oh yeah, we should have kept McEwen, but no, it's all right. He's doing just fine. I think. I don't know. I understand not scoring in 15 games, but yeah,
because he's not going to kill penalties, right? He's not going to kill penalties. Zach McEwen, and like he's been fine. He's been fine. I don't think he's like hurt the team really at all, so I'm okay with that. But he is ideally your guy that is like your 13th or 14th forward. If you are
Mhm.
going up against a rival where you are, like let's say the Sens are going to get up against the Habs, plug him in, sure. Put him on the fourth line, play him like 7, 8 minutes a night, and I think he'll do fine. He started off the season hot because he had two really nice goals against LA. He had one where the puck just bounced at the blue line. He took a slap shot from like the left side of the ice, like at the left point, like a one timer, and it went like way past Kemper because it was a like he has a hard shot, right? He's a big guy. Like it was an absolute clapper that just went top shelf. And then he scores again that game against LA with a nice snipe and a pass from Gaudette, funny enough. And then he got an assist a couple games later, and then he fizzled out. So
Yeah.
Noah Gregor is like he's basically coming back for an injury. I want him in the lineup there. But yeah, those are like two of the depth players that have been okay for the Sens this year. It's just over an 82 game schedule, it's not the best. And you can
I
look at Vancouver as being a good example, like using good depth players.
Yeah, I think because we've also developed a lot of players too, because a lot of
Hmm.
the players that we've called up, I mean, Atu Ratu we gained in the trade a couple years back with the Islanders for Bo Horvat, but at the same time he has had time to develop in Abbotsford, along with like Arshdeep Baines, we signed him out of junior. Jonathan Lekarimaki, he's our prospect that we drafted, and there's a lot of players that are being called up that like Canucks scouted out, either signed out of college, signed out of juniors, drafted. Like they're doing pretty well. I mean, even if they were like prospects when they traded for them, they've built them up. I mean, Aturatu's playing regularly in the NHL, so very good for him. He scored his first goal with the Canucks a couple games ago as well. Yeah, I think Adam Gaudette would stay more in the lineup, whereas Zach McEwen, yeah, he can float in and out. I think he's probably just in because Gregor's injured. Um, and also, I just wanted to rub salt in the wound once again that the Sens gave the Canucks a third for Travis Hamonic.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what was funny? I don't know if you know this. It was supposed to be a fourth, but Dorian didn't have a fourth, so he just gave up a third. And they could have
I've
had
heard
Hamnick on
that.
the waivers, right?
I've heard that. That is because I remember every time like he would be on the ice, Canucks fans would just be like, "Oh man." Um, yeah, it's and that they traded him. We got a third, and I'm like, "Oh wow."
Yeah. It's he's I like I actually like Hamnick more than most. But he has been in every game this year. Actually, no, every game but one. He has played 19 games this year for the Sens, and like literally everyone in the Sens community had him like penciled in as a buyout, penciled in, and then I don't want to like make a it's conspiracy theory here or anything, but when Travis Hamonic was coming in up into the NHL, I think it was around 2010, 2011, Steve Stais was on that team with the New York Islanders. Steve Stais is now the general manager of the Ottawa Senators. So he didn't buy him out. You got to wonder if there's some sort of emotional connection there. And of
I
course,
mean, I would say something, but I also don't. I can't speak on that because I'm a
mhm,
Canucks fan and we keep signing every Pittsburgh Penguin.
mhm.
So yeah.
But then you got to wonder, it's like this guy is 33, and last year he had a bad year. And then right now he has, I think, one assist in 19 games, and I think he's like a -9. So if you're not scoring, and why is he in the lineup? I don't want to pick too much on the sixth D of this team, but I think it's just something both of you and I can relate to, having defensemen that are just very frustrating at times.
Yeah. Ty said in the chat that the pick was Pedersen, and he means the second Elias Pedersen
Yes.
because, and I honestly, yeah, sure, he's not putting up points. I just find that it's funny that we have two of them, so take that as you will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys are doing well. You guys are doing well, at least from an outside perspective. But we're gonna dive into our third segment coming right up. However, I just have something to say about La Ruche, which is a independent production focused on community inclusion and quality people. So if you're interested in supporting the Game Over network, we have crowdfunding options now available. It is in the description of this episode. You can find the link to our Patreon page, as we're working on a page through La Ruche, which is we're aiming to raise $15,000, and if we get that, then we have government grants. And if you have any suggestions for Game Over going forward, please let us know in the comments below. Now we're going to head into our third segment here, where we're going to talk about your loss of JT Miller, who has been out of the lineup for a little while. Now, we're not going to dive into what that was all about, but how the Vancouver Canucks have done so far this year and how kind of they work with when JT Miller is out of the lineup. So I'll just start off with this. Is JT Miller your MVP, like for the Vancouver Canucks? Because there is a couple of players in there that could be that.
Like, do you mean this season?
Overall, just overall, just
overall.
of the team, yeah.
The team, I think he's definitely up there. I wouldn't say he's our most valuable player because, like, yeah, he does a lot, but that's usually only when he's at 100%. There are some times where he's, not up to par with some of his play, and I mean, he runs a little bit like an aged Brady Tkachuk in a way, where I feel like when he was younger, he took not that he's like super old right now, but prior he was a little hot-headed, and then Tocchet came in and kind of slowed that down. He is a goal scorer, he's a playmaker, he's able usually to defend. I mean, obviously he's out right now. I wouldn't say he's our most valuable player. I genuinely do not know who to call as our most valuable player. I mean, it would probably be between Quinn Hughes and our goalie. Because the Canucks defense, when Quinn Hughes is not there, is absolutely, like, pretty much night in, night out. Quinn Hughes is our best defenseman. I think it is rare that somebody else takes that spot. Yeah, night in, night out, Quinn Hughes is our best defenseman. I think there are a couple games this year that he hasn't done as well in, where some other players have stepped up. I think, Brandstrom was one of those guys one night to really make a better play for the Canucks. But yeah, I'd say Quinn Hughes or usually, I mean, Kevin Lankinen right now, because he's the starting goaltender, it seems. But when Demko comes back, it's going to be Demko because the puck's going to get through the defense, and the goalie is the one who has to save everyone. So,
For sure.
I mean, scoring-wise, I'd probably say JT Miller just because he's powerful. But, like, when you're talking about overall, I think Quinn Hughes or whoever's in net.
For sure. And I think it's a good thing that you guys kind of have one of each. You have your number one D. You have the starting goaltender, at least when Demko is in the lineup. You have a number one center in Pettersson. I know there's been the challenges over the years, but you also have Miller who can play down the middle as well. And that has, that's worked out really well. One thing as well that I want to touch upon that maybe the Sens, like, is there a portion of the game that Rick Tocchet has really improved going from the Travis Green era to the Tocchet era for Vancouver?
I mean, I would say our defensive play, because we did have, we sure still do score a lot of goals sometimes. Like, I remember last year we started the season scoring 8-1. We did have, like, the Boudreau bumper kind of in the middle there. between Green and Tocchet, and I think Boudreau was more offensively minded, so the defense really lacked um, any capabilities. Whereas with the offense, it was performing pretty well. That's why I feel like Andrei Kuzmenko survived as long as he did as a Vancouver Canuck, was because he had a coach that was very focused on offense, whereas with Tocchet, he runs a more strict system, a harder system, like harder hitting. Travis Green is known for his very, I would say, hard, difficult training camps, like how I think it was Ollie Levy, like the amazing picture of him just laid down on the ice during training camp. That was Travis Green. Travis Green's an interesting coach. Yeah, I think the difference is they also had the offensive bump from Boudreau, but the Tocchet era really showed them how to also do defense good, and has helped a lot with some players kind of evolve their game a bit, like Miller, like Pettersson. I think that has helped them kind of evolve more into two-way forward types. Green, I feel like he was set in his roles for different players, so it's like you're going on the power play, but you're not going on the penalty kill. Like, I remember there was like stuff about how some players, right when Boudreau got hired, they went to him and were like, "Hey, put me on the power play, or put me on the penalty kill." And yeah, I think that was potentially might have been Elias Pettersson. I'm not sure, but Elias Pettersson's been pretty good at killing penalties here. It's funny because the Sens are playing a lot better defensively. Yeah, I'm not saying like, I'm not saying that like the green team, they were just kind of existing, I feel like. Whereas with Boudreau, they were so focused on offense that they let their defense crumble, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the Sens are sort of finding their identity, I guess, but you can see sort of throughout the years how one team can be so set into one mindset, and then eventually you transition to another coach, and the new coach just genuinely doesn't work out. And luckily for you guys, it seemed like you got that work in, because you had the Travis Green era days where you had the same core. Bruce Boudreau, a lot of fans loved him, right? And a lot of people said that he didn't deserve to be fired. You bring in Tocchet, and that's sort of a little bit of at the time, I remember it being a kind of 50-50 at the time, because he just got fired, I believe, from Arizona at that point, and he was working on TNT. And then boom, like he goes straight to Vancouver and he does a really good job there. For like
Wins to Jack Adams.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys had a great year last year, you know? And I think there's just a good foundation in Vancouver right now, which is nice to see, at least. Like, I don't want to jinx it. But it's nice to see, because this is a market that was kind of out of it for a long time, right? From basically 2016 to 2023, right? Like,
yeah, it was pretty out of it. I mean, there's always like the diehard Canucks fans, and I feel like there was a bit more hype generated during the bubble playoff series, but then again, there was not a lot of exciting stuff going on at the time, because it was 2020. Yeah, I feel like the market kind of just fell away, and like I felt like as a person just being the only like Canucks fan in the room sometimes, because everybody, like the casual, like I don't want to like disparage like casual fans, like, but people who aren't, their emotions are not necessarily tied to this team solely. Things kind of fell apart for a while there. Even like when the Sedins retired, I feel like a lot of people, like, caught people by surprise because they had no idea what was going on with the Canucks anymore. With yeah, now that there's a resurgence, it's fun because like my friends are my friends are like getting it, like the friends that aren't really into hockey, they were like trying to keep up with what was going on in the playoffs, like, or like my younger sister, she's texting me about like, hey, how do I watch the Canucks game? And I feel like there's that excitement again in the market,
Mhm.
which wasn't necessarily there. Like there was the Bruce There It Is era, and yeah, it was controversial when he got fired. I cried on stream. Um, it was not my finest moment, but I think at the Talkit hiring was controversial because we knew before, like 2 weeks before, that he was being hired because the NHL, there was a lot of stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it eventually got to be exciting again, and even though the Canucks aren't exactly like living up to their standards, I'd say to start the season is I feel like that's only a conversation though because at home, like on the road, we're 7-1.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
I
just
wish
because
we
we're
could do
not
that.
performing. It's just because we're not performing at home. That's the issue.
That's funny. For us too, we start out the year very well at home, and then we were really bad on the road, and then we figured out sort of to play on the road, and then we just started losing at home. So it's like, what is going on here? Ty Smith, the comment in the chat, saying, I think after the Steens retirement, there was a leadership vacuum in the room, and there was two budding sides competing for it. Once that was fixed by trading Horvat at the deadline in 2023, the team started to gel overall. And that's a good point because the GM at the time was Patrick Albin, and that's a new GM coming in. He wasn't drafted by Benning or uh, and trained Horvat like the captain, right? I know the contract was up at the end of the season, but they still did it. And Horvat's done
Yeah.
well, it seems like in Long Island, but that's a gutsy move that you need to do to make it work. And you just gotta wonder because the Sens are 8-11, that you might have Steve Davis might have to pull a move like that because you gotta shake up the core.
Yeah, I think it was because Alvin started in the 22 season as like full-time GM because they brought in Jim Rutherford to look for a GM, and then like a month later they hire him. Um, and I believe he was an AGM before with Pittsburgh, and then we got him from there because of course everyone from the Canucks gets the B from Pittsburgh. The thing was with like the two leadership sides, I guess, in the room was the season after the Sedins retired, the Canucks were kind of up in the air. And then the 50th season rolls around. They give Horvat the captaincy. They also bring Miller in because I believe that was, I'm like 95% certain that that was his first
Yeah,
season with the Canucks.
yeah, 1920 was his first year. I know
Yeah,
that.
so that was his first year with the Canucks because we traded for him at the draft that year because he was previously with Tampa. Yeah, we give up a first rounder. Oh no. Yeah, no, we did give up a first
For
rounder
Miller, right?
for Miller, yeah,
Yeah.
and some other draft picks and prospects and the usual, but we get Miller at the draft. He comes in and Bo Horvat's named captain, which we drafted him back in 2013, so it kind of he was kind of from like his days in the OHL, he looked like he was probably being trained to be captain for the Canucks eventually. And personally, I think he should be the Islanders captain. But that's my opinion, far removed from the Islanders sphere of influence. But yeah, I think there was that issue. It was because they came in and it was these two big deals and these two big guns. It was JT Miller and Bo Horvat. These two players were both UFAs the same year. They were both heading into contract years. And then the year, the like not year, like a month before the regular season starts, it was September 2nd, and it was just a random day. Was it September 2nd? I think it was. Yeah, it was a random day. I was coming home from the Aritzia warehouse sale. I'm trying to take a nap, and JT Miller signs for 8x7. And I'm like, wow, okay, so everyone's like, what's happening with Horvat now? Because it
Mm-hmm.
seems like you can have one, but you can't have the other.
Mm-hmm.
Horvat gets booted out at the All-Star break, which makes it very awkward.
I remember that.
As
Yeah.
yeah, because he had to play for the West with the Isles stuff on him. Because the Canucks also just love to make big trades during the All-Star break. We did it with Elias Lindholm last year too.
Yep.
But yeah, Bo Horvat gets traded, and they're like, okay, we don't have a captain. JT Miller wasn't named captain the year after, which I feel like is still a pretty good thing. I feel like that just adds more pressure. I know that was an issue when Luongo was briefly captain, even though some people didn't really claim him as captain. He was captain from 2008 to 2010. Um, yeah, they make Quinn Hughes captain, which I think, I think that's a pretty good decision. He's, like I said prior, he's our MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but I think once it was fixed by trading Horvat, I wouldn't say the Horvat trade necessarily fixed it. It fixed some of it, but it didn't fix all of it because the Canucks still had some issues, some questions about their future of some players. Yeah, I
But it wasn't
I
going to
think
happen
that
overnight, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
sure.
eventually you see 12 months later, well, not even 12 months later, the next season they start out the season so they were really good at the start, I remember. Then they had a little bit of a trail off and they started to, I don't know, the Pacific Division was just weak overall at the time.
Yeah.
But they figured things out, and I think that's like if things keep going this way, I don't want the Sens to trade Brady Tkachuk. I don't want the Sens to trade Thomas Chabot. I don't want the Sens to. I don't want to let go of Claude Giroux. I want him to retire an Ottawa Senator. But you just have to understand at times that this may not work. And I'm not talking about the guys like Ridley Gregg and Tyler Klevin. They'll be NHL players. Those are not the players you got to trade because they're not your leaders. And with the Ottawa Senators, you could just looking at this game tonight, they could have easily won. Oh my goodness, they could have easily won. Like Quinn Hughes out of the lineup, right? From a it should have been a 2, but because of the rule book, it was a 5. JT Miller out of the lineup, your two-way player can put up 100 points a season, which I never would have expected from Miller in the first place when he was traded to Vancouver. Brock Besser, he's one of my favorite players in the fact that he's like a very good goal scorer, and I think there's even higher heights that he can reach. The Ottawa Senators, the only player that's out of the lineup is Noah Gregor. Come on, what are we doing here, right? What are we doing? And you're on home ice. You're on home ice, and they still find a way to lose. But it was only by 1 goal too. I'll give you a little bit of insight about the Sens here. Whenever they lose, they will usually start off the game very bad. Or not very bad, but it will be mid at best. Then we allow the first goal, and then the players get frustrated because they know what's at stake and they get in their own heads and they turn the pucks over, and then it just keeps it's a snowball effect, right? It keeps going. This has happened. This was not the only night this season where the Sens have made a late comeback. This happened last game against Vegas, funny enough. It happened against Colorado. It happened against the Islanders as well. And then they muster up a few goals at the end of the game just to, I don't know, keep us in our seats or whatever. And then they lose the game by 1 goal. But the thing is that they don't get any points, right? And this happened in past years with the Sens. Last year, happened the year before. I go back to the year of 2023. We were, I think, maybe 7 points out of the playoff spot. If we just, tied the game up late in some of those games, it's possible we could have made the playoffs. And it happened time and time again this year as well, where they had the inability to not score a tying goal in the last minute. It's such a weird thing, and that's eventually when you got to point it to the players themselves and their mental attitude throughout the game. you're professionals at the end of the day, right? You should be able, like, you're gonna go down in games. You're gonna have games where you get blown out. You're gonna show frustration. But what it seems to be a trend, that is concerning. That is so concerning. And I feel like seeing it with the Canucks over the years, like it's happened. Like I've seen the JT Miller outbursts, right? Whether he's right or wrong, that's a player that just runs hot. And then you look at the Sens, you have Brady Tkachuk, you got Claude Giroux. Those are players that run hot. Then you got to ask the question, is that the type of leadership the Ottawa Senators need? Do they need the guy who runs hot to lead you into battle? Because he's going to do it. And he's going to play he's going to be really emotional. But does that team need a leader like that wearing the C every single night? Because I haven't brought that up before, but I kind of have to, because Brady is 25. He's in the prime of his career, and he hasn't played a single playoff game yet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's fair. I mean, who's the player? Jeff Skinner hasn't played a single playoff game in his whole career too.
Yeah.
But that's a different situation. Yeah, the C conversation is interesting because now that you bring it up, I feel like that's why Miller didn't get the captaincy nod.
Mm-hmm.
He's still an alternate. The alternates are him and Elias Pettersson. When one of them are out, it's usually like Tyler Myers, and I feel like Quinn Hughes, because he's so composed, really.
He is. Very.
He is like prime material for, a decently level-headed captain, whereas yeah, Brady's kind of all over the place, I think.
But you saw
Just
tonight.
from outside tonight, yeah. But like I don't even know who you would give it to in that instance, because like I understand Shabbat maybe, but like would that cause some issues in the room? Does Travis Green want to do that? Because like, he's just coming in, he's trying to get this team to work for him. There's a lot at stake there. And yeah, I don't know. It is interesting though that Tkachuk, yeah, he gets out of the game as well. But Sanderson from Ty in the chat, captain material?
But
He's 22, dog. Like that's a child.
I know.
He's older than me. But still, like, if
Yeah.
Brady and Shabbat get moved, I'm not saying like move Shabbat or Brady. I'm just saying maybe the captaincy should be elsewhere.
It's something to think about, right? And I want to talk about this just a little bit in our OT segment. If anyone in the chat has any questions or any statements that you would like to make, now is the time, before I just talk to you about our merch that we have on the Game Over Network. We have pretty much everything when you get down to it for every single team. So if you have an opportunity and if you want to help out our startup that just happened this fall, please feel free to do so. And with the holidays right around the corner, now might be the time if you want to do it. But yeah, that's all I have to say on the matter. So like this captaincy thing, right? In my opinion, just to finish off this topic, the Sens should. Okay, I hate saying this. I hate saying this. We should have been more proven until we gave a captaincy to anyone. Not even just Brady in general. We gave him the captaincy basically right after he signed his long-term extension. Because at that point, this was November 2021. This was right in that era where, unfortunately he passed, but Eugene Melnyk was still the owner of the team. We signed him to a 7-year extension after a lot of holdouts. He becomes the captain, and we were in the rebuild still, so there wasn't any pressure there. on him because it was just this nice guy and he gives it all every night. And I love Brady Tkachuk. I was like, I'm not trying to dunk on him at all, but we give him the contract at 22 years of age, and you're captaining a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 8 years now. And then the pressure just builds on you and it builds on you. And you just have like all this frustration to the point where he hasn't had any sense of winning, right? So all he knows is to just go and fight guys and try and be chippy at the end of the game. That's all he knows, right? And now he's 25. You just got to wonder, it's like, is that the style of leadership that the team has? And I know, like Ty saying Sanderson here. But yes, he's 22, right? And I want a captain to prove himself, like in a sense where the team is in the playoffs and he is clutch. And like him saying here, if there's no captain for a year, then give it to Sanderson. I agree on that point where you can, like, let's just say they trade Tkachuk, right? Let's say they trade Tkachuk. Don't give a captaincy to anyone else. Don't do it. Just let it sit for a year and then see who is your number one piece. Is it Timmy? It's possible. Timmy is like such a good player and he cares. And I would say he's a leader. But he's 22, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's also the issue with a captain. Also, you have to be taken seriously.
Yeah,
I think by the officials, by the general media personnel. So I feel like that's also potentially wouldn't be the best situation for Stützle as well because he's gotten a lot of flack. I made a joke about it at the top of the show. He's got a lot of flack for supposedly
falling over a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. He likes to pull an Inter Miami just now and then. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. Do you think they should have held out a little bit longer? Because like, they trade Erik Karlsson, 2018. They don't have a captain for the next 3 years, and then they give it to Brady just because he signs a big long contract. Do you think they should have held out a little longer?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't need, like, it's just a C. It's a C on your chest at the end of the day. You have no idea what is getting said in the locker room. You have no, like, Brady is like an outspoken guy, but you have, like, it could be Giroux literally commanding the room at 36 years of age, right? It could be that. But as soon as you go see the players on the ice, I want to see a player that just sticks out just a little bit extra. The player that's going to tie the game late to muster up a couple of extra points for the Ottawa Senators as they head into the playoffs. A player that is going to, let's say the Sens go on a little bit of a run in the playoffs, right? They go to the second round. A guy that's going to score a couple of clutch goals and really show that this is a a player to really like lead this team. And when Brady does a good job at it, like, the fans love him. But when he shows like these outbursts at the end of the game, you just gotta question it. You gotta question it. One of the things Ty is saying here was the leadership that Staios brought in to help him lead as well, which I agree. He is 25 at the end of the day. And while he's been in the league a long time, he's not exactly a vet, right? He's like entering the prime of his career. And so like the Sens added Michael Amadio, Nick Cousins have been MIA these past few games. I agree. They haven't. Nick Cousins, I don't know where he's been recently for the Sens. I know he has that reputation around the league of just being a rat, and it's true. I agree. He hasn't really done anything to that point so far this year. But if it happens, I'm not surprised if he like has a hit that's, at least to some looking like it's going to be dirty. I think he has 4 points this year, and Nick Cousins has always sort of been a scorer for the Sens. Mike Amadio, that was a little bit of a risky signing overall, just because he had never played an 82 game season, and they gave him a 3-year extension for $2.6 million per year. So you really got to do your homework on that one. He has 2 goals this year, I believe, or maybe 4 points.
Oh my.
Yeah, so that's a guy that's supposed to be your third liner, and he has 4 points. Um, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at, right? It's like the Sens have the top 6 pieces intact. Like they have Stutzla, Giroux, Norris, Brady, Batherson as your top 5. But then it seemed, and you got Pinto on the third line, but he's sort of been a ghost this year for the Sens, which is not good. And that's just one thing I think Vancouver does very well. I think they find a way to get depth scoring. Um, Whether it be like the players like Dakota Joshua in the top 6, or a guy that's on the fourth line, in like Teddy Bluger or something, P.S. Suter. They do a good job at that. And those players win you games at times. They muster up extra points in the standings, and the Sens have not been able to do that over the years. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was just about to mention, I think, is Josh Norris, because he's had a lot of injury issues the last few years. Is he potentially on the trade block?
He could be. You're going to have a tough time training that $8 million cap hit, however.
I forgot about his
Right?
contract.
Yeah. Like he's a very good player. And like on paper is like a really good second line. Like he's like basically like the Horvat. He's good. He's a good two-way player. He's not going to be like a point per game, but he's a good goal scorer. He can take face-offs. Physically, he's a little bit lighter for sure, but pretty much everything else is good when it comes to.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sorry, I just looked at his contract.
Yeah, 8 mil, right? So that's gonna be a tough one to trade, but he's not like super overpaid, like So there's a possibility there. It's just the injuries at the end of the day. If you're like looking to make a shakeup, I don't want to get too much into this, but you're probably looking at a guy like Batherson for sure,
Yeah.
or Shabbat. But once again, Shabbat makes 8 mil, so
Oh, and is that a no move? Modified no trade. He has
it
a
is.
modified no trade until 2028.
Yes.
Whereas, yeah, I think Batherson could potentially be on the chopping block.
I think as Batherson is probably your fourth or fifth best forward in terms of power rankings, right? So, and he has a sweet contract at $5 million for like 2 more years after this. So he's a bargain because he's a guy that can put up 70 points for you. It's just like, and he's a winger. So the only issue is there, if you're trading a winger, you're not going to get a ton of value. And that's just where I kind of sit, because you're not trading Sanderson, you're not trading Stutzla. Brady is there, and I'm not recommending them to trade him. It's just, like you gotta wonder. Like he's been here 7 or 8 seasons now, and if Steos wanted to really make a mark, it would be trading a guy like Brady Tkachuk. But that's not
Yeah.
what I'm saying for him to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he also, this would be the year to trade him too because he does have the no move moving in starting next season.
It's a good point. I mean, it would start, July 1st, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just something to think about, because I never really want, for the Sens fans in the chat, I never really want to get in this discussion. It's just like with the Brady Tkachuk getting traded stuff, because I want him to be the captain, and I want him to be a Senator for life. But it's just, on one hand, you got to question like the leadership in that locker room, because at the end of the day, it's all mental for this team. It's not injuries. It's not like, you having a bad goalie, because you have Linus Ullmark, even though he has not been good. It's not like defensive depth or like your top four. It's not your scoring. It's not your youth. It's all mental. And I don't think, while the depth is shaky on this team, I still don't think that they're going to be, the guys that are leading this team. So at the end of the day, it is an internal issue with the Ottawa Senators right now as they drop 5 games in a row. Your final thoughts on this game, on your team, on my team. I'll just kind of let open the floor for you here as we close off this live stream tonight.
I was just gonna say, hey, at least you guys have your 3 best forwards signed long term, because Brock Besser is a UFA in the offseason.
That's true.
As a Brock Besser fan, that totally does not keep me up at night. Quinn Hughes, he has 3 years left on his deal, so it's not like he's gone, but at the same time, we have Demko, whose deal is up in 2 years. Brock, that's up this year. Connor Garland is up in a couple years. There's just a lot going on. The longest term player we have right now is Elias Pettersson.
And I know he's doing better this year, but 11.6 mil, is that worth it? Just to top it off?
You know what? It could always be worse. That's what I've been telling you. People are like, oh, he's making $11.6 million. He needs to do better. He needs to play better. And I'm like, Tyler Seguin's making 13.
It's true.
Go look at Jim Nill. Don't look at Patrick. Pettersson, he's also been dealing with tendonitis, which is not something that necessarily goes away. I don't know. There's pretty much, basically all you have to do is do, exercises for it, and it could just come back at any point. So, anyway, I think he's definitely gotten back to some of his old self again, though.
For sure. Yeah, and he looked pretty good tonight. I know he didn't get on the score sheet, at least for goals, but one of my favorite players in the league. But thank you, Kaja, for joining the Game Over. I'm sure, the Sens, the Sens and the Canucks play each other in a month, so it's possible we're going to be linking up there once again. So thank you for joining us here tonight. The Ottawa Senators lose their 5th game in a row. Things are bad. It is time to panic. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This team is not doing well right now. Fans should be upset. There should be no excuses. The team needs to do better. Yeah.
Don't throw a jersey on the ice.
Don't. No. But, if the team's not doing well, don't be shy to boo them. Don't be shy to boo them to the fans, because a lot of you are using your hard-earned money to go to the CTC, which is out in the middle of a cornfield on the outside of the city. It's okay to boo. It is okay. You have the right to do that. Don't be shy to do it. That's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you, Kai, once again for joining. We'll see you in the next one in a couple of days here on Game Over.